Ready for a deep dive into a subject that I think we all know, but maybe don't know that well.
Oh, mysterious. I'm intrigued.
We're talking about love,
Okay.
but not like, the rom-com version.
Right.
Today we are going full-on science nerd,
Yeah.
breaking down the science behind love, like all those intense feelings, the attraction.
The chemistry.
Exactly.
Ooh, I love this. I'm ready.
So to help us decode all of this, we've got a fascinating Big Think video featuring, who do we have?
We've got Helen Fisher,
Yes.
who is a biological anthropologist.
Yeah.
And we have Gail Saltz, who is a psychologist.
Excellent. And they get into some pretty juicy stuff. Have you ever heard the phrase, love is a drug?
Oh, yeah.
Well, it turns out that there's a real neurological basis for that.
There is. Yeah, it's pretty fascinating. It all starts with this, cocktail of brain chemicals that flood your brain when you fall for someone.
Oh, I like where this is going.
Right?
Okay, so tell me more about this love potion. What's in it?
Well, one of the stars of the show is dopamine.
Dopamine. Isn't that the one that gets us hooked on, like, everything, like chocolate?
Yes, all the good things.
Social media.
Yes, exactly. So dopamine is the reward neurotransmitter. And it's all about that feeling of pleasure and that feeling of motivation when we experience something that our brain thinks is valuable. And when it comes to love, that thing is another person.
I mean, yeah, that makes sense. But how does this reward system actually play out when we're talking about love? Does it, like, make us see our partners as more attractive or what?
That's a really interesting question. And the answer is probably yes. So dopamine doesn't just make us feel good. It also plays a role in learning and memory. So when you're flooded with all this dopamine in the presence of someone, your brain starts to associate that person with pleasure.
Okay, so it's kind of like your brain is training you to want more of that person, to crave them, almost like an addiction.
Exactly. Exactly like an addiction.
Yeah.
And it's not just dopamine either. We also have serotonin, which is another key player in this love potion.
Okay, tell me about serotonin.
All right. Serotonin is linked to obsessive thinking. That feeling of I can't stop thinking about them?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so it's serotonin that's really fueling a lot of that.
So we've got dopamine driving the attraction, the reward, and then serotonin's fueling the intense, like, obsessive thoughts.
Right.
It's like the perfect recipe for, like, infatuation.
Totally. And this mix, this potent mix of chemicals,
Yeah.
it doesn't just make us feel, giddy and lovey-dovey. It actually impacts our decision-making.
Wait, are you saying love makes us irrational?
Well, Helen Fisher, she points out that romantic love can actually deactivate areas of the brain that are associated with critical thinking and judgment. So it's really those ancient parts of our brain that are in charge of drive and craving.
Oh.
They kind of take over.
So it's like our brains are going, logic. Who needs logic? We're in love.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And that might explain why we do things in the name of love that we wouldn't normally do.
Like, what kind of things are we talking about?
So think about, those whirlwind romances where people elope after knowing each other for, a week.
Oh, yeah.
Or when people ignore, major red flags.
Right.
Or how about those relationships where there are, all these seemingly impossible obstacles, but they just, we'll figure it out.
Yes. It's like the heart wants what it wants,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. It's like the emotional centers of the brain just kind of override the rational ones.
Okay, so love conquers all. Or maybe it just temporarily disables our common sense. But, speaking of long-term relationships, does all this mean that love is doomed to fade once these chemical surges wear off?
Well, not necessarily. In fact, the way that we approach love and relationships today might actually be working in our favor.
Really? Okay, I am very curious to hear more about this.
So think about the modern dating landscape.
Yeah.
We have this really long, extended pre-commitment phase that just didn't exist for, earlier generations.
That's true.
We have dating apps.
Right.
People live together before marriage.
Yeah.
It's all part of getting to know someone on a deeper level before you commit.
Yeah, it's not like our grandparents who met at a dance, courted for a few months, and then boom, married.
Exactly.
We're doing things very differently.
We are. And this slow love phenomenon, as Helen Fisher calls it, it gives us more time to, assess compatibility beyond just that initial spark. We learned about each other's values, communication styles, annoying habits, all that stuff.
Yeah, all the important stuff.
All the important stuff before making that lifelong commitment.
So we're trading the whirlwind romance for a more, deliberate, measured approach?
Precisely. And according to Fisher, this might actually be a good thing. She argues that this slow love trend could be contributing to stronger, more fulfilling relationships.
Interesting.
Yeah. In one study, 81% of married people said they would remarry their current spouse.
Wow, that's impressive. It sounds like taking our time might actually lead to more lasting partnerships.
It really does suggest that those initial, like, really intense feelings aren't the only ingredient in, a long-term successful relationship.
Well, I mean, even with this slow love approach, we still have to choose the right partner.
That's true.
Right.
Yeah.
So what does science have to say about, long-term compatibility? Give me the expert advice here.
All right. So this is where Gail Saltz comes in. She has some really great insights. While, we often hear that opposites attract, Saltz actually believes that shared values and similarities make for smoother sailing in the long run.
That makes sense. I mean, if you're already on the same page about the big things in life, you're probably less likely to, butt heads about them later on, right?
Exactly. It's like having this, built-in foundation of understanding. Fewer fundamental differences means less need for compromise and less potential for conflict.
But surely, shared interests aren't the only thing that matters, right?
Right.
What about communication? Being able to, work through disagreements. Those things seem pretty important, too.
Absolutely. And Saltz really emphasizes that good communication and those conflict resolution skills, they're essential no matter how much you have in common with your partner.
Okay, so shared values might give you a head start, but it's not a guarantee of relationship bliss.
Right.
You still got to put in the work.
You do. You got to put in the work, and that work often involves navigating, all those ups and downs that come with any long-term relationship.
Well, speaking of keeping the spark alive, what does science have to say about, maintaining a happy and healthy relationship for the long haul?
Well, Helen Fisher emphasizes novelty. And she has some, surprisingly practical advice backed by research that can help couples keep that love alive. And that's what we're going to get into next.
Okay, I am ready.
All right, let's do it.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've talked about those initial fireworks, that new love.
The honeymoon phase.
Yeah, exactly. And they are amazing.
Oh, yeah.
But, they're not the whole story, right? So the question is, what happens when those kind of dopamine-fueled highs start to, fade a little bit?
Right. Is it just downhill from there?
Well, not necessarily.
Okay, good.
Because as the relationship evolves, other hormones and neurochemicals come into play,
Like what?
especially oxytocin. You might know it as the cuddle hormone.
Oh, I've heard of that. Isn't that the one that's, released through physical touch, intimacy?
That's the one. And it's really tied to, feelings of attachment, trust, and bonding.
Yeah.
So even as that initial kind of, fiery, passionate love starts to maybe, mellow a little bit, oxytocin helps to foster a different kind of connection.
So it's like you're transitioning from the honeymoon phase to something a bit more stable and secure.
Exactly, exactly. And some experts believe that this shift from passionate love to what they call companionate love is actually a healthy and natural progression.
Okay, I get that. But companionate love doesn't sound quite as exciting as passionate love. I know.
Okay, well, think about it this way. Passionate love is all about that, intense longing. You're almost obsessively focused on your partner.
Yeah.
Companionate love is more about, deep friendship, shared experiences, and mutual respect.
So it's more like a slow burn, a steady flame that kind of keeps you warm instead of a quick burst of fireworks.
I like that. That's a good analogy.
Thanks.
Yeah. It's about, really feeling seen and understood by your partner and knowing that you have someone who's, in your corner no matter what.
That does sound pretty great. But let's be real. Even in the best relationships, people are going to get on each other's nerves. So how do we handle, conflict without derailing everything?
That is the question, isn't it? And this is where those communication skills really become crucial.
Right.
Remember what Gail Saltz said, regardless of how much you have in common, compromise and effective communication are so important.
I feel like I'm always hearing about communication, but what does that actually look like in practice? When you're in the middle of an argument.
Yeah, it's about more than just talking, right? It starts with approaching those disagreements with empathy and understanding.
Okay.
Remembering that your partner isn't the enemy. You're on the same team, even if you're not seeing eye to eye in that moment.
So it's less about, winning the argument and more about actually finding a solution together.
Exactly. Instead of focusing on who's right and who's wrong, You're trying to understand each other's needs and feelings.
Okay.
And that means truly listening to each other, not just waiting for your turn to speak.
I'm so guilty of that
I
sometimes.
think we all are. But like that active listening is so crucial.
Right.
Pay attention to like not only their words, but also their body language. It really shows that you're engaged and that you value what they're saying.
Okay. Empathy, active listening. Got it. Anything else that helps when those disagreements come up?
Well, it's also important to like choose your battles wisely. Not every little disagreement needs to turn into this huge fight.
So sometimes it's okay to just let things go.
Yeah. Ask yourself, like, is this truly important or am I just feeling a little extra sensitive today?
Right.
Sometimes agreeing to disagree and just moving on is the best way to, like, prevent things from getting out of hand.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay, so we've got communication, choosing our battles. What other strategies are there for, like, just keeping the relationship healthy over time?
Well, Helen Fisher, she emphasized the importance of novelty.
Novelty.
Yeah. Even after you've been together for, a long time, you still need to inject, like, fresh energy and excitement into the relationship.
Yeah, keep doing new things together even after the honeymoon phase is over.
Exactly. It doesn't have to be anything extravagant. Try a new restaurant or explore a different part of your city, or even just having a deep conversation about something you've never talked about before. It's all about breaking out of that routine and experiencing something new as a couple.
I love that. It's like a little reminder that there's always more to learn about each other.
Exactly. And those shared experiences, create new memories and
Yeah,
just strengthen that bond.
totally.
But, we can't talk about keeping things fresh without talking about a topic that's often considered taboo:
Okay, let's hear it. What is it?
sex.
Oh, right. Yeah, sex is definitely a big part of romantic relationships, so it only makes sense to include it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And Helen Fisher pointed out that maintaining like a healthy and fulfilling sex life can be crucial for keeping that spark alive long term.
Okay, but what about couples who have been together for like years,
Yeah.
even decades? I mean, is it realistic to expect the same level of, passion and excitement as in those early days?
Well, it's a really common concern. And, it's important to remember that sexual desire, it naturally ebbs and flows over time. It's influenced by all sorts of things, our hormones, stress
Mhm.
levels, life changes, all of that.
So, like, it's not necessarily a bad sign if things have cooled down a bit in the bedroom?
Not at all. It's normal.
Hmm.
But it is important to like, address any concerns and work together to keep things satisfying for both partners.
Okay, so communication is key again.
You got it. Couples need to be open and honest with each other about their needs and their desires.
Yeah,
It might feel awkward at first,
I can imagine.
but bottling those things up will only lead to like frustration and resentment down the line.
Right.
So, maybe start by creating a safe and non-judgmental space to have those conversations and approach the conversation with curiosity and a genuine desire to like understand your partner's perspective.
So less like you never want to do this anymore and more like, hey, I'm wondering if there's anything we could try differently.
Exactly. Exactly. It's also helpful to focus on what you do enjoy and what you'd like to explore together.
Okay, so open communication, but are there any other like practical things that couples can do to, keep their sex life interesting?
Well, remember what we were talking about earlier about novelty.
Oh, right.
That
Yeah.
applies in the bedroom too.
Ooh, give me some examples.
I won't get too graphic here, but there are so many ways to introduce novelty and excitement into your sex life. It could be trying like a new position or experimenting with different kinds of touch or even just changing up the location. It's all about stepping outside that comfort zone and rediscovering what you both enjoy.
That's great advice. So it's about keeping things fresh.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But it's not just about trying new things. It's also about being like fully present and mindful during intimacy.
Okay.
Put your phones away, turn the TV off, really focus on connecting with your partner.
It's like you create this little like bubble of intimacy, shutting out the rest of the world.
Exactly. And when you can really be present with each other in that way, it can deepen your connection and make it a much more satisfying experience for both of you.
It's been awesome. I'm like feeling really inspired.
That's great. And remember, there's no one-size-fits-all approach to relationships.
What?
What works for one couple might not work for another.
Every relationship is different.
Exactly. But regardless of your situation, the key is to like keep communicating, keep exploring, and keep prioritizing that connection with your partner.
This has been a fascinating look at like the science of love and relationships, but I want to look at the bigger picture now.
Okay.
Helen Fisher mentioned the evolutionary roots of love and attraction. I'd love to dig into that a bit more.
Yeah, let's get into that. I mean, why do we fall in love?
Right. Is there a biological purpose to all this madness?
That's a great question. Let's find out.
All right, so let's zoom out a little bit and look at love from a bigger picture perspective. Why do we even fall in love in the first place?
Yeah, it's a great question.
Is it just about finding someone to binge watch TV with, or is there something more, something deeper going on?
Well, evolutionarily speaking, love is about a lot more than just, finding a couch buddy.
Okay, good.
It's all about survival.
Survival.
Yeah, ensuring that our species continues.
So you're saying that love is nature's way of tricking us into having babies?
You could put it that way. All those intense feelings that we've been talking about, the attraction, the attachment,
Yeah.
it's not random. It's deeply rooted in our biology.
Yeah.
It's all part of this, grand plan to keep the species going.
Okay, I'm listening. Tell me more about this grand plan.
All right. So that initial surge of dopamine, right? It motivates us to pursue a potential mate.
Makes sense.
Then you've got the obsessive thinking fueled by serotonin, which helps us stay focused on that person, even when there are other distractions.
Okay.
And all that intense focus, it helps us bond with that partner and create a strong attachment.
So we'll stay together long enough to, raise kids.
Exactly. We might not be consciously thinking about, procreation when we're falling head over heels, but our biology has other plans.
Wow. So love is basically a really clever strategy to keep us together long enough to reproduce.
That's the idea.
Yeah.
It's pretty amazing how much our biology influences something as, complex as love.
It is. So it's not just about procreation, right? I mean, love plays an important role in our overall well-being, our mental and emotional health.
Oh, absolutely. Think about it. Strong social bonds are essential for humans to survive, right? We rely on each other for support, for protection, for cooperation. Love is one of the most powerful things that binds us together.
Yeah, we're definitely social creatures. We crave connection. We want to belong.
Exactly. And love gives us a sense of security and intimacy, even a sense of purpose. It gives us someone to share our lives with, to support us through tough times and celebrate with us when things are good.
So it's not just about those butterflies and romantic gestures. It's about building a life with someone.
Yes, supporting each other, creating something meaningful together.
That's beautiful. I think this deep dive has been incredible. If we started with the chemistry of love, went all the way to the evolutionary roots of attraction, we even got some good tips for building healthy relationships.
I think it's fascinating how much we can learn about ourselves and the human experience just by looking at the science of love.
Totally. And I feel like we've only just scratched the surface, but before we go, I have one last question. If love is so deeply rooted in our biology, does that mean we don't really have control over who we fall for? Is it all predetermined?
That's a question that people have been asking for centuries. If it's just biology, then is love really just a matter of chemistry?
Right.
Where's the free will in that? Or, maybe we do choose who we let ourselves fall for. It's kind of a mind-blowing concept, isn't it?
It really is. It makes you think about how much of love is a conscious choice and how much is instinct.
And I don't think there's an easy answer to that.
Yeah.
But I think that's part of what makes love so amazing, that mix of biology and conscious decision-making.
Well, I think that's a great place to leave our listeners. We've given them a lot to think about today. And if you're interested in learning more about the science of love, we'll include some resources in the show notes. So keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep on loving. This is Host Speaker signing off for the deep dive. Catch you next time.